Hey guys, welcome to another week of Midweek. I hope that you guys are having a great day. I know with the weather changing, you got allergies going on, the flu is coming back, you got COVID going on, and it just can be kind of overwhelming. And so I just hope and pray that you guys are doing well. I hope you're having a great week. I hope you're staying encouraged. I hope you're staying motivated through the challenges that are facing you on a daily basis. But as we continue with our midweek, we draw one more week closer to Christmas Day. And so I hope that you've taken the challenge that I presented last week where you read a chapter of the book of Luke on a progressive scale with the day. So for instance, if you would have started last week on December 1st and progressively gone through each chapter as the days go on, today you'd be reading Luke chapter 9. And so as you continue to do that on the 24th, which is Christmas Eve, if you do every single day, you would have completed the entire Gospel of Luke, which tells the amazing story of Jesus Christ from the perspective of good old Dr. Luke. And so I hope and pray that you guys are doing well with that. I hope that if you are doing it, that things are just starting to pop out at you, that you are seeing the grace of God lived out through his ministry, through his disciples. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And so before we get going, I kind of want to hit you with a little bit of a Christmas, I don't know what the right word is, but a little bit something Christmassy. I mean, it is Christmas season after all. And so one thing that I really enjoy about reading in Luke, and most people hate this, and I usually do too, but when you listen to it rather than read it, it brings a different perspective. And so I was listening to my audio Bible, and it was going through the genealogy of Jesus, the lineage, you know, all the names where so on and so forth is the father of so on and so forth. And so you just have this whole list of different names, who is the dad of this, who is the dad of this, whose dad is this, whose dad is that. And you see Jesus's lineage lived all the way back, not just to David, but all the way back to Adam. And it is incredible. I mean, you want to talk about fact-checking if Jesus is real or not. You could just look at the lineage and how it lists father after father after father, leading all the way to Abraham. And then you get guys like Boaz, and then it keeps going, and you get other people all the way to Adam. And like I said, when you read it, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's just kind of annoying because you have all these big words, these big names that you can't pronounce, and it gets a little bit overwhelming. But when you listen to it and you hear someone reading it to you, all of a sudden these names that you may have been familiar with as you read the Old Testament are starting to pop out, and you start to see how Jesus is connected through the line of David, through the line of Adam. And it is pretty awesome. And so if you get a chance to listen to that, just listen for some of those names. And what that tells me is that all of the Old Testament, every single part of it is all about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. From Genesis to Revelation, it is all about Jesus. Everything points to this one man, this one person, the Son of God and the Son of Man, culminated into one person, and that is the Christ, Jesus. And so I figured that would be pretty cool to kind of start off. And so as you've probably already read that, if you're going through the progressive Luke, you've probably already seen that, and it was a little overwhelming for you. But try listening to it and see what names pop out to you. Another side note is Luke 2:52. Now, if you come to church with us, I know you've probably heard me speak on this within the last 2 months or so. I did a sermon with this topic in mind, and I use this passage to counsel every single person that comes into my office, whether it's at the prison, whether it's at the church, whether it's a friend, family member, whoever it is that comes and seeks advice from me. This is the go-to for me. So if you ever come, and the reason I'm bringing this up again is because there may be people listening right now who may need to hear this, because you're living a life that just seems overwhelmed. You are unbalanced, and let this be a check for you to look at. So anyone who comes to me with an issue that they're facing, that they're dealing with, maybe depression, anxiety, they're just feeling overwhelmed, I always go to this particular verse because this shows us how Jesus grew. And it says in Luke 2:52 that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. So you see 4 categories within that one verse: wisdom, stature, God, and man. And so Jesus, as he grew up and grew older, because we don't see him again until he starts his ministry, but from this moment, we see 4 elements that Jesus grew in. And so wisdom being one of them. So what are you learning? Stature being another one. So how physically active are you? Are you exercising? Do you have a normal daily routine, weekly routine, whatever it may be? Are you growing in your spiritual life with God? And are you growing in your social life with people? Do you have friends? Do you have a network of people that you can love on and that they can love on you? And so if you are unbalanced in any of those 4 categories, and maybe you have all your eggs in one basket, like you are just super spiritual and you're at church every minute of every day that it's open and you are just constantly going, my guess is you're still feeling pretty unbalanced because your life is not balanced. And so you got to back off the spiritual a little bit, which is weird for a pastor to say that to you, but you've got to back off of the spiritual a little bit and add the elements that you're lacking. And so I want you to kind of check that out. And maybe this Christmas season, you've been feeling awfully blue and you've been feeling just kind of low and you're depressed, your anxiety is high. You don't know how this is going to happen. You don't know how that's going to come out to play. And you are just unbalanced. And so maybe you need to look at those 4 categories. I do this to myself quite often. And you need to ask yourself, which of these categories is suffering? Which one am I overdoing? And how do I bring balance upon all 4 areas? And so if all you do is hang out with your friends, but yet you're not doing anything physical for yourself, you're still going to feel pretty crummy. And so take that upon yourself. If you need help with that, if you need to talk to somebody to help kind of guide that conversation, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be glad to walk through that with you, and you'd be surprised how things change when you just kind of balance yourself out. And who better to follow than Jesus in that example? And so as we get into our midweek this week, one thing I really want to hit on is, I think it's in Luke 8, because I've been walking through every day I've been trying to progress that with the chapter of Luke. And so I believe it was Luke 8 where it's talking about the woman who touched Jesus's clothes. You see, he's headed to a guy named Jairus's house to heal his daughter, to help with what's going on over there. And all of a sudden, Jesus is walking, it's crowded, and the disciples are there. They're literally like elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder, walking through this crowd. And all of a sudden, Luke tells us that there is a person who has been bleeding for 12 years. I mean, she is just dealing with a lot. And Luke gives us a little inside access on her life, and basically says all the money she's ever had, all the wealth that she's ever known, she's put in to these doctors, to these people who can try to help her. And not one person's been able to cure her of what's going on. And so as they're walking, this woman just has the faith, just a little bit of faith. And her hope is that if I can just touch the clothes of Jesus as he walks by, if I can just touch his robe as he just grazes on by, if I can even get close enough to do that, then maybe, just maybe, something can happen. Let me ask you this. Have you been so desperate before for something to where you just put it in the hands of Jesus, not knowing what the outcome would look like, but you were just so desperate that you were willing to do anything, as crazy as it may sound, as crazy as it may look like, you were willing to go all in because you trusted in who Jesus was and is? This woman was willing to do that. And as I start looking at that story, I start to put myself in that position and try to figure out, would I have been that guy, or would my pride have gotten in the way? Would I have let myself look foolish enough to crawl on the ground to even touch his robe in front of a crowded street? Or would my pride get in the way? And I think sometimes as we lead up into the Christmas holiday, we have so many things that just beg for our attention, right? And we don't want to look foolish in responding to that. And so we just kind of let things go. And it worries me about myself anyway. And maybe if you're like me, you kind of fall into this trap a little bit, is why am I waiting until the last moment to go after Jesus? You see, Jesus felt the energy leave his body to go to this woman, and he knows that her faith has made her well. And so Jesus even asked his disciples, knowing who touched him. I mean, this is God, for crying out loud. So he knows who it is, but he's using this as an opportunity to let his disciples in on a little lesson. Like, hey, it's a faith like that changes your life. It's a faith like that makes a world of difference. And so I don't know what kind of faith I have, but I want a faith like that. And so how do I get there? Well, first of all, it's trusting in who Jesus is. And as we move on into Luke chapter 9, we start to hear Jesus feeds the 5,000, and then they move on, and Jesus says, hey guys, I want to know, who do you say the Son of Man is? And let me tell you, how you define that question changes everything for you. You hear it more in Matthew 16, where Peter gives his great confession and Jesus spends a little more time, and Matthew writes down a little bit more on that. But here we see it again in Luke, where they're really talking about how you identify Jesus changes everything. So if Jesus were to sit here looking at you face to face, eyeball to eyeball, maybe sitting across the campfire cooking a s'more or whatever it may be, and he looks directly at you and he says, hey, who do you say that I am? Because your answer may be what heals 12 years of bleeding. Your answer to that question may be what heals a broken heart, maybe what heals a broken body, It may be what heals the future of a dark road that you're going down at this very moment. How you define who Jesus is changes everything. But sometimes the answer is no still too. I mean, sometimes the answer is still no. But it's that faith that takes you to the next level. And Jesus says, who do you say that I am? And as you progress through the story, you see, well, some say you're Elijah, some say you're a prophet, some say this, some say that. He says, I don't really care what everyone else says. I'm asking you, who do you say that I am? And then Peter responds, you are the Christ, the Son of God. And that answer changes everything for him. In fact, in the Matthew translation, in the Matthew version, Jesus responds to him and he says, you are correct in saying that, and that wisdom didn't come from man, but came from God alone. And from this point forward, you are going to be known as Peter, and for which I will build my church. You are the rock. Identifying Jesus, and then Jesus identifying you and your purpose. And that's why we have the Word of God, is so that we can read what our purpose is. God, why did you make me? What is my purpose? What am I doing on this earth? And just watch what God does with you when you identify who he is. And what I love about Luke, and I'll close with this, but what I love about Luke the most, probably more than any other book in the Bible, is his heart for the broken. And you've probably recognized that as you've been reading through the last week of the chapters in Luke, of just the heart that Luke has for the lost. I mean, he writes stories that no other gospel writer writes. He writes stories that you would just think, well, why is this important? But it's always about people who are hurting. For instance, Luke 7, there's a woman who had just lost her only son. And it says she's a widowed woman. So with that statement, we know that she had already lost her husband. And now their only child together is now in a casket being carried to the graveyard. And Jesus has compassion over her. He sees her. And Luke is the only one that records that story. And so Jesus walks over to her and just touches the casket, and he says, son, get up. And the boy gets up from the casket. Scary experience. Oh my goodness, if we watch this thing live, we would all probably just pass out because it's just so amazing. But Jesus walks over the casket, he touches it, and he says, my child, get up. And the boy gets up right in the middle of being carried and runs over to his mother. What an incredible story, but Luke cares about the lost. And what I want to challenge you with this week is that if you're feeling any of these ways, depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, brokenhearted, feeling lost and helpless and hopeless and all the above, just know this, you can rest in the arms of Jesus. Your faith in him will make you well. It may not change your circumstances, but it will change your perspective. And that, friends, is what makes you well. And if you need a reminder of just how much Christ loves you, look at what he did in the Gospel of Luke. Look at all the accounts that you see here and all the stories from the people who Jesus has changed their life and impacted who they were. And these are the lowly of the lowlies. These are the people that the community would ostracize and cast out to the side courts and get rid of them. And these are the people that would be exiled from the community, and yet Jesus has compassion for them. And if Jesus loves them, how much more will he love you now that his Spirit is inside of us? And I just love that. And I hope that that's an encouragement for you this week. I hope as Christmas comes closer, you don't get more and more overwhelmed, but yet you find more reasons to be joyful. And so, friends, I hope that you have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you this weekend. And if not this weekend, I hope to see you next Wednesday as we continue with our midweeks. God bless, guys, and have a great week.